Hello. In this video, what I would like is that at the end of watching it you are able to calculate the relative efficiency of each of the leadership styles proposed by Vroom's model, Yeton and Jago in a given situation. In other words, within the model, you're presented with 5 fundamental options representing the 5 basic behavioral styles. The model helps you to decide which of these is the most appropriate for a situation. It does so by asking you what is the greater or lesser efficiency of each one of them. Also, the model suggests you the one that it considers that is going to be more efficient compared to the others. To do this, we are going to use a spreadsheet that I have prepared and you can download in the path that you have here on the screen. If you click on this link, it will take you directly to a web page which is an international repository, and in this repository you can download the file. You click on the file, you download it, and you will have something like what you see in this tab. There are the general instructions where it is going to comment or summarize the same things that I am going to comment you in the video, but that you can have on hand to remember in the future when you want to use it. This is the tab where you're going to do the work, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it would work. These are the 5 models that it presents, the 5 styles that the Vroom, Yeton and Jago leadership model presents to you. This graph represents the relative efficiency, indicating that the higher the bar, the more recommended the style is. For example, in this graph, as configured, the recommended style would be autocratic 1. I am going to comment how this graph would work and also interpret how the attributes or the variables that you are going to value for this model allow us to change the values that end up appearing in the graph. This graph precisely corresponds to the values I introduced earlier, already preloaded for visualization. It reflects how I approach and assess a particular situation. Specifically, in this scenario, the decision or issue faced by the team leader carries a high-quality demand, denoted by the rating of 5 on the scale, where 1 represents minimal and 5 signifies significant importance. This insistence on quality underscores the necessity of choosing the most fitting decision or solution based on the available dataset and information. You don't need a commitment in the people that are part of your team for the type of decision. For that decision to be implemented and implemented successfully, you don't necessarily need the people in your team to be committed to the solution or the decision that is made, is how I diagnose the situation. You want to decide fast, you don't have an urgency to decide right now, that's why there's a 0 down here. But you do have a motivation to decide as quickly as possible without urgency, but with a certain eye on the time it takes to decide. You're not particularly interested in developing your team to learn how to make decisions like this in the future, nor is it something that will help them progress in their professional competencies, nor is it something you want to use to train or to manage or enhance the talent of your people. It's a decision that is independent of this process. You have a lot of information, or at least you consider that you have a lot of relevant information regarding the problem or the decision that you have to make. It's a problem that's very poorly structured. It's a rather diffuse, ambiguous problem. You have more or less clear what you want to obtain, but it is not very clear that this is the most important variable. You're not very clear about what data you have to use, and in case you have it, how you should process it in order to reach an objective and accurate decision, so it is a rather unstructured problem. There's a high probability of commitment among the people in your team, that is, whatever you decide, they will accept it and trust your judgment. There is not much congruence of objectives between what each one of the people that are part of your team are pursuing and what you are looking for as the objective of your team. Or sometimes, what happens is that there is also a conflict. In this case, there is a conflict between subordinates. What each of the subordinates is pursuing is not the same as the other people in the team. They have different points of view, even conflict between them, or at least aspects that are not easily reconcilable. And the people that are part of your team, because they have a lot of information, have as much information as you have. That's the situation, and if you have diagnosed this situation, the Vruthi would tell you is more interesting. Yeton and Jago model suggests that the best thing you could do is to decide on your own. You don't even need to ask them or ask them for information. With the information you have, make the decision and communicate it. If this is not what you want to do, the next option is ask for certain information from your collaborators, and the third option is in any case if you want to make an individual consultation with each of them. You're not going to get a better decision in this model or in this situation than if you were to decide on your own, and certainly what the model doesn't suggest to you is that you approach this decision as a group and have the people in your group make the decision. What I'm going to do now is this same thing if we were to change any of these things, for example 1 here, because the options would be changing. That is, as the information that your collaborators have decreases, what happens is that the group options or those in which they intervene taking the decision in an autonomous way are less desirable. I'm going to leave some of the values where they are and I'm going to change other values, and you can see how when the values change it's because the situation is different, and when the situation is different the model proposes a different style to approach it. For example, if the commitment requirement were to start to become somewhat critical, that is, you need the people on your team to commit to the decision in order for the decision to be implemented. You want people in the future to know how to make similar decisions. Look how things are starting to change, and you don't have too much information. Also, there is very little likelihood that the people on your team will commit to the decision if they are not involved or active in it. So then you can see how in this context where we still have a lack of congruence of people's objectives, but we have been changing some of the aspects, and then in this situation the most advisable thing would be that you meet as a group, the consultative, address the problem, analyzing the problem and getting information as a group with your team collaborators, the people who are in your team under your responsibility. But then you make the decision. In other words, you will still have the control and the responsibility to make the decision and then communicate it to the group. If the congruence of objectives, for example, were higher, then what happens is that the preferred option in this case would be for the group itself to decide. But you see, it's a different situation from the other one, and so you can see for any situation that you have and that you are able to diagnose with these variables, the model would suggest to you which style is the most appropriate. For instance, in this scenario, both options are quite viable, with a preference towards the last one. However, in the perspective of the Vroom, Yeton, and Jago model, the first option would be the least favorable. At this point, I believe you're ready to compute the relative efficiency of each leadership style within a specific context, as per the Vroom, Yeton, and Jago model. I encourage you to utilize this Excel sheet for the analysis, enabling you to appreciate the model's recommendations across various contexts. By diagnosing different situations, you'll ascertain which style the model would propose for each scenario.